for joining us this afternoon for our final panel of the day. Yes. As you can perhaps tell, I am unfortunately not Anita Dubey. I know it's. And sort of in the context of the last panel where we were looking at the idea of mobility within contemporary art practice, I think it's quite relevant that we talk about an international art world, but we often tend to forget or gloss over the fact that not all of us have the access to, have as much access to mobility, or as some of our Western colleagues might. And for certain complications around these questions of access that Anita could not be with us today. So unfortunately you are here with me, but I will try my best to do justice to my fantastic panelists. So going from right next to me, we have Nazia Andaleeb Preema, an amazing painter and performance artist whose work has questioned issues of gender, sexuality in this country. Then right after that is Wasif Bhai, Mulem Wasif, an incredible experimental photographer, also a teacher at Pathshala. And then next to Wasif Bhai is Russell Chaudhary, who is a former laureate of the Sandani Art Award and a fantastic photographer in his own right. And lastly, but certainly not least, Zihan Kari, whose work you can see just across the hall from here, and is an amazing videographer and works with the collective Lacing Chittagong Joke. So I'm going to invite Preema to start this afternoon's discussions. Preema, as I mentioned, is a painter and performance artist whose work revolves around challenging gender roles and gender identities in Bangladesh. And so one of the things that we want, to kind of lay out the ground for this panel and why it's important to have this discussion. As more and more international attention comes to Bangladesh, and this goes back all the way to the 70s, when Bangladeshi art was framed in a certain manner. I think we were talking yesterday about how in the 70s you had a huge influx of photographers from abroad who were coming into Bangladesh seeking to represent it. And of course they had a very Orientalist vision. Their practice subscribed to a sort of Pornamiseria model where it's all about the poverty and the desolation that they found. And institutions like Pathshala, like Chobi Mela, were able to reclaim modes of representation, modes of producing photography, modes of producing images of Bangladesh. And the four panelists we have all show extensively abroad and have also spent time abroad as in foreign residencies or having lived abroad. So Preema has shown in the 2016 Fukuoka in the Fukuoka Asian Art Museum as part of the Triennial, also Studio Kora. And I'm going to pass the mic on to her, but it was sort of an open question around how her work around gender and sexuality. Again, when you talk about South Asia, this entire question of I've heard this thrown about quite a bit, even within the walls of the Sun at this time, talk about the entire question of where the women are and where their voices are. So there's a particular framing that we use to talk about gender and sexuality where there's an assumed loss of agency, there's an assumed abduction of agency, rather, which Preema's work very definitively challenges. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to her.
That's the question already. Yeah. So, hello everyone. Thank you, Abhilash. So, actually, the thing is, it's a process. My work, as you mentioned, from painting to performance, it is a journey. It is a process that I follow over last 20 years now. So while I'm following my process, I believed in my philosophy and the context that I come in from, the experience that I gathered from my personal life and the society that gave me. So it is not planned to become who am I, what is my expression of art would be. Rather, it follow logically, creatively, aesthetically, the way it should be. So while doing that, I noticed lately, I started work on feminism. I believe in feminism. I think this is a notion that is very important to follow. as a particularly South Asian artist, because here women are very dominated by the notion of the societal structure, and it is very stereotyped, to be honest. No matter what we see, it is not the actual scenery. So when I started in 2009, absolutely straight pointed to feminism, I noticed gradually from then to now, it is quite difficult for me to possess that I believe in when in terms of sexuality, women, freedom of sexuality, express their sexual notion and their belief to their life as an individual. So it is very interesting for me to see that how my work has been influencing the society, individual, and particularly the notion of religious extremism. So it is quite encouraging for me to proceed with this more and more, because I feel very challenged and censored. But the problem is that since it is highly challenging and highly restricted to come with this sexual notion as a Bangladeshi artist nowadays, it is for me too difficult to go with the actual reality, what I want to express. Rather, I need to censor it. Sometimes I need to censor my own work. I need to, as I mentioned, because I don't have to. So there is a constant struggle within me, with myself and my expression, that whether I should go this way, where I should improvise my work to keep it going, or I should just challenge the norm and the extremism, whatever things that are going around. Like sometimes now my works are now challenged to be accurate by the gallery, by the personal, by the collectors, because they don't know if the notion of Bangladeshi art in future could determine that this is the art actually Bangladesh produced. So there is a lot of interesting thing going on around my work. So, but for me it is very interesting that for me it is very encouraging that trying it, coming back and going to my core. So it is the process. So I feel that since there is a constraint to this particular sexual women independence, I believe that disruption is important to proceed with the work, and I keep going on this. So that is my work process. Thank you, Abhilash.
So before we move on to Wasif, I mean, one of the questions I wanted to address to you, as we were discussing, you did the residency in Fukuoka, and you mentioned several times that you've been censored when showing work in Dhaka. So my question is, how do you begin to reframe your work in a context such as Fukuoka? How do you see your work changing, and how do you occupy the space of being a Bangladeshi female artist, you know, with all the sort of weight that has within a context such as that?
Great question. So, as you said, as you already mentioned, that when I come back doing this, the Fukuoka presentation was here, like it is incorporated here, if we can show it. There's this intimacy conflict. It was a project that I was we were encountering, two women were encountering their body parts. So that was the performance there. And even in Fukuoka, I noticed there is a resistance of this touching each other body and really grabbing them each other. So there also, this village also, this is the one. So that was also give a little shock to the whole audience. So I think that is not, as an artist, they got shocked. Rather, where I'm coming from, it was important to the people. That from there, she's coming here, and this model, actually, the Japanese girl is a model who wanted to do the performance with me because she wanted to feel the space, she wanted to feel the action. So she was really, she was very supportive, to be honest. Her name is Ayami. So when I came back, as you mentioned, that I wanted to do it, as we always come back and perform or do the talk about it, but I was highly, the society was very resistant about this performance particularly. And I was being very bullied, people were really kind of, they kind of mockery about the whole thing, that you cannot do it here. That's the straight thing I heard, that oh, you cannot do it. If you do it here, you do it in a private party or sort of like this space. So it's been always treated as a subject of sarcasm, rather very serious notion of a country like Bangladesh, South Asian country, should really highlight this issue, because these issues are not meant for a joke. These issues are serious issues to address, that artists should express that, that notion of restraint surrounding an environment. It should be broken. So here we are seeing this art summit, like a very contemporary, cutting edge art festival, which we are so proud of. And there, out there, we are every day fighting for our right to be an independent artist. Whatever what we want to express is kind of very, very paradoxic to me. So this notion should be addressed, and it's interesting for me to go with this topic and making a space where I can create this space to be, this is her, as I did her photography. So it's really, to me, sexuality is part of my life, part of everybody's life. It is not doing an act, it is a belief, it is what we are, it is the existence. And I feel that South Asian Muslim countries especially will have a, like, I don't know when, but they need to understand the notion of this.
So you mentioned that when you were in Fukuoka, there was a particular framing for the work, and when you came back here, you were encouraged to do it in more private context. So I mean, my question is, how do you frame your public? I mean, who do you call your public across these different contexts, and how did this performance evolve for these different audiences?
Well, I think everybody is my audience, to be honest. And for my art, I don't really particularly target a particular audience, if that is what you want to know. And I don't want to, so I don't want to frame it in a particular way. It's just go the way I want to possess the work, possess the experience, to be honest. So it would just go the way I want and the way I express it through my experiences.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to make this quite an open platform where conversations can go across panelists as well as across the audience. So if at any point any of you want to interject, make an intervention here, please, you're most welcome to. Just raise your hand. Yes, please.
Thank you. Been really enjoying the insights. So my question is for Nazia Andaleeb, Preema. I've observed and admired your series of visual art. One of my favorite series is A Staring Woman. But I'd like to know, what makes me curious is the disruption that you create from one piece to another. What is the inspiration or motivation you have behind that?
That one line, to be honest, like that, like to continuously be in your process. Disruption is the only thing that you can follow to go to the next level. That's it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're going to move on now to Wasif. Hi. So Munir Wasif, as we mentioned before, is an experimental photographer and also a prolific teacher at the Pathshala Academy. To give a bit of context about Pathshala was a fantastic educational institute and experiment created by someone we're privileged to have with us today, Shahid Al-Alam. And it was one of the first great experiments of how to reclaim the framing of South Asia from a largely Western author. Munir Wasif's practice has, to a large extent, reframed the way we understand landscape. I'm going to take as an example two works that are here in the summit, See Each Other as Free and Machine Matters, as well as the work he's shown at the summit and widely abroad, which is called Land of Undefined Territory, which looks at the border between India and Bangladesh and the various economies of material, of labor, and capital that flow in and out of that in informal manner, in an unrecognized manner. So, I mean, the question of landscape, the question of how we understand landscape is something that I think connects both you and Russell's practice. But I would invite you to invite you to discuss the forays that you made and the experiments that have facilitated the evolution of this practice.
I think it's a very complex topic to begin with. I think we live in a country where thousands of layers, thousands of differences, thousands of divisions. So when we say we are talking about Bangladesh, we also need to be specific. Which Bangladesh we are talking about? Are we referring to the hill tracts? Are we talking about the labor rights? Are we talking about the millions of women who are struggling every day in the governments? Like there are different kind of notions. Bangladesh is not a static place, and I think stereotypes is all about representations and the politics of representations. What we show, how we think, and what we don't show in our work. I would like to refer to a very famous British author called Stuart Hall, who have extensively worked on this politics of representations and the black body. So he always said that a black photographer with a black camera not necessarily will take a black picture. So just because we live here doesn't mean we live here. I think the world has become extremely complex. The boundaries are getting broken. The Middle East is the perfect example, you know. Like we don't know where Iraq starts and where Iraq ends. We don't know where is Palestine. We don't know where is Egypt. Half of the world is burning, you know. So this whole notion of states need to be. We need to ask these questions again, and also keeping in mind the kind of practice we do. I think there is also question of existence. Like brands, you know, we have a lot of famous artists who are producing same kind of work for ages. It's also because there are certain collectors who would like to buy the same kind of work again and again, you know. So it's not only about the artist, it's also about the kind of environment we are living in. So it's not one-handed. On the other hand, I think we need to actually ask us critical questions all of the time. A lot of times I think we get very happy when we have exposure abroad, but I have a quite a bit problem, you know, when we, like now, maybe in Pompidou, some years back, there was an India show, there's an Africa show, there's a Mexico show, there's a China show. But very few times we see an American show in Bangladesh or a British show in Bangladesh, you know, how we, when there will be a time when we will see Britain from our eye, you know, from a Bangladeshi perspective. So who is framing whom, you know, is also extremely important, you know, the canon, the perspective. Yeah.
So I think you mentioned something that's very, very interesting, which is to do with this idea of relocating Bangladesh. I think that through what you're talking about, you're completely shifting the geography of where one might imagine Bangladesh beginning or ending. In fact, I mean, you're talking about how Bangladesh might begin to reframe the Middle East versus reframe Africa. And one of the things we've sort of been in discussion with about as well is that to a large extent, when we're talking about the framing of Bangladeshi art as well as art from other, ex-colonial countries, etc. We've been talking about the way that it's been framed in the West. Whereas almost all the artists on this panel have shown not just in institutions in Europe or America or what's largely called the West, but also in institutions in Asia. So my question to you is, how do you locate your own practice within this shifting lens that it tries to put you in?
I don't think this is my job, somebody else will look at my work and analyze, critique, whatever they want to do. But I quite get bored with my own work, so I constantly like to shift and create a certain kind of uncomfortable position where I feel vulnerable. So I think vulnerability is extremely important for artists. And I think teaching is also extremely problematic. So I'm teaching for quite a long time, and I think the more you teach, you especially in a country like Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, you get in a very authoritative position where everybody calls you sir, 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 and that puts you in a positions where you feel like you're expert. Actually, you don't know anything because the world has shifted so much that you have no idea where the world has moved. I think the best word for me nowadays is recalibrating, because we use Mac. And every time we plug the Mac into a projector, we have to recalibrate our Mac because you don't see the same black anymore. So you have to manually calibrate. So when we look at our work, I think we have to constantly recalibrate ourselves and see where we are. So so I think having a mirror in front of yourself philosophically is extremely important. I don't know. I think when you look at this summit, I think there are a lot of beautiful examples. A lot of people might not notice it carefully. Like there's the exhibition on Sri Lanka. There are 100 artists from Sri Lanka. When do we get to see artists from Sri Lanka and Bangladesh? Never. We see French artists, British artists, Spanish artists. Why? Because they have all their embassy and they have funds, But we don't get never funds to bring artists from Vietnam. We never get a fund to bring artists from Senegal. I'm part of a festival that me, Alun Bhai, and few of us curate, and this is a constant struggle. How we show work of other countries. South to south. We need to build a different kind of network. One of my very close friend, Naim Mohammed, he just made a film on this non-aligned countries. Like if you look at 60s, there was still a hope. There was supposed to have a big conference in Algeria or the African countries, Muslim countries. But now we live in a world where we always want to go to Paris, but to some extent, Paris is almost like a 19th century museum box dead city. Nothing happens there. Sorry, I hope I'm not hurting anyone. And I think when I started to teach, the first thing I have done, I've told the students that you can't just repeat the old school. So the strong tradition of photography was in Bangladesh everybody was taking beautiful black and white pictures. So the first rule was you can't take any more any black and white pictures, just as exercise. So start from opposite and see what happens. And when you really know where you are, and you can go back. So, and also, when somebody, like I have done a big project on Islam, the project called In God We Trust. It's a symbolic name that you see in American dollars. And I work with a French agency which is based in Paris. But I'm very careful about how my photographs are being represented, because a lot of times you put your work online and you don't have any control. So I think we need to have authority over our work, and we need to know how our work is being represented in different places. And also I work on long-term projects. So 8 years back when I started the project, the situation of Bangladesh was very different. And then Shahbag happened, then Hefazat happened, and a lot of things happened. So I really need to reposition myself and look at the history from various perspectives, because things shifted. Yeah. So it's not a constant position. Like to be in the river, you're constantly moving.
want to start with talking about this work that you mentioned, In God We Trust, which is an incredibly sensitive work. I mean, in terms of the way that it has to be presented. Could you talk? I wonder if you could, because I know there's a lot of members of the audience who will not be familiar with it. If you could talk a little bit more about the work itself and its presentation and how you maintain this space of criticality with this presentation as well.
It's something actually very simple that sometimes we don't look at. So I live with my father, I have a sister, I have a wife, I have a son, and we fight with each other all the time because we have a very different take on our world, you know. My wife is an actress, my father is a lawyer, my sister is a doctor, I'm a photographer, but we have very different kind of perspective on religion or the kind of practice we have in Bangladesh. So it's all about having multiple voices, you know. It's all about showing the dots in between, you know, the gray dots. So it's not black, it's not white, but there's so many dots in between. And most of the time when we show something, we have a quite extreme positions and the voices in between get lost. So it's about having a very deep tonality, you know, where I'm actually interested to raise questions rather than giving answers, you know, rather than giving solutions. You know, let's talk, that's it.
As we show in the very crowded place, and we have some intention to do what actually we want to do, or maybe I want to do. Me and my another 3 members, maybe some of are there. We actually try to break the tradition from the white cube gallery or the other things, and we just try to make a platform for the newcomer to make to do the experiment like new media in Chittagong. And yeah, it's a very open platform. It's a street show, and that's the very first time we initiate. We take initiative to make a site-specific show there, and I made my another video art, and that was like really. Can I show the another video, the first one? This is the crowded place from Chittagong named Cherokee. Before that, my work was like a one-channel video, and through that work, actually, for the very first time, I tried to interact with the people. You can see that projection is the name of the work is Simple Death. It's about a daily labor. Actually, used to sleep in the street side in Cherokee, and I used to make his sketches when I was in the students, and suddenly I found that he is dead in that street side, and I found that the people are not so concerned about this. So I thought maybe if I make a video and project it on the floor in the middle of the road, how actually people will interact with that video, and what actually they interact with the reality. It's like absurdity, reality, something like between this. So yeah, you can see some sometimes people feel scared, sometimes people are running on it, and sometimes we have to actually, through my work, I'm talking about how we actually interact with the people and about the show, because in that time I have to face a lot of problem about the video. Like one rickshawala, I can remember he was watching that video maybe 20 or 15 minutes, and after that he felt very bored, and he said, "When will the cinema start?" And I have to answer him that maybe it's not like a cinema. It's like different things. I have to tell him the stories, and maybe he can understand. I don't know actually. in my first video I was said I was confused. So in my second video and through that show, actually I felt like, I mean, as an artist, how actually I have to act like a artist and also activist and also maybe some other things I have to, I have to do, and as an artist I have a lot of responsibilities, and day by day I just started to think like this. So this is about the 2012 what I faced, and 2014 actually I just first introduced, in 2013 I first introduced one curator. So the curation word actually I learned from actually that initiative when I was selected at Fukuoka for the Fukuoka Triennale 2014. So the curator came and we talked about a lot of things, work, and I have seen the curatorial point and how they actually how the curator do, how the curator work actually. Before that I have not so idea about the curation. So, and I've seen that, I don't know, I've seen, after that I met a lot of curator, but about the curation and curator, the curator, if I pick a word as a curator, so sometimes I felt like it's in the word curation, the artist is very alone. I felt like, because before that for us, like I'm the artist, I'm the curator, I'm the displayer, I'm the audience sometimes, and I have to arrange all those things, after the curation, then the artist, maybe he will just produce some ideas only, then you don't have to do anything. So that was also a little confusing for me. So physically, am I absent through the work, or this is the way actually? So, and also I've met a lot of curators that they have their own point of view to present the work, and sometimes some curators they are very focused on my artistic lifestyle, or not my work. They are choosing the artist actually. It's like man specific, not the art specific, something like. And someone like just pick my word, maybe they seen some biennale or something like. So in that time also a little bit confused, and through day by day, like these days I think that the word actually, we are talking about some stereotypes. So I don't know, nowadays it actually broke up. There is no stereotypes, something like beyond curation and artist and art practice actually. So it's actually mostly depend on the curator mostly, that what actually he needed, and also depend on the artist actually what his point of view and what he is doing as an activist. It's not depend on that I have to do something that people will like and curator will like. So this way I'm just going on.
Unfortunately, we're running short of time now, so I'm going to open the floor directly to questions, but also keep this conversation going. So, do we? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentations. They were really great to see and hear. I'm a little bit confused still about the notion of stereotypes of Bangladeshi art, and that's why I wanted to ask, how do you see the relation between the stereotypes of Bangladeshi art to the stereotypes of global art? Can you imagine, it's a question to whoever wants to answer. I'm just still trying to imagine or decipher the stereotype of Bangladeshi art, because what I've seen so far, there are really good, extreme, practices of professional contemporary art. That's why I'm still trying to think, okay, what are these stereotypes of Bangladeshi art, and why actually to even what's behind this title of of even imagining the stereotypes of Bangladeshi art. Well, I'll answer a little bit. The stereotype, this word actually, it's very interesting. So we have our stereotype, like the outer world have their own stereotype. So it needs to blend together. So when it not blend together, it's have to reject one another, to be honest. If we want to go to if you want to create a new perspective, I think we need to really reject each other's stereotype notion, because like when Western see us, the Western art world see us, they have a certain perspective to see us. So like if I want to talk about my art, I already shared it with Obi Jit a little bit before John. Okay, that's a nice thing. So before that, when they see my work, especially curators from abroad, they kind of like sometimes, even galleries, they kind of like don't believe that I come from there. Either I am not telling the truth when I'm storytelling through my work, or they're kind of not having the right direction for my country or my environment or my society. That is the stereotype for them. So in context of my stereotype or our stereotype is we never showcase or have the courage to project that we feel we should project. We always kind of